Michael had been working as the night guard at the Coloseum in Rome for almost 6 months. Everyone thought it was just another job, a paycheck for keeping vandals and overzealous tourists at bay. But Michael knew better. Every creak, every gust of wind that howled through the ancient stone walls held a sinister undertone. He felt it from day one. But hell, the pay was good, and jobs were hard to come by. His shift started at midnight when the city quieted down. The streets outside were nothing but ghostly shadows of tourists who had packed their bags for the night. His only company was the flickering of old lights, the sound of his heavy boots on the worn marble floors, and the echo that followed every step, almost like something or someone was right behind him. The Colosseum at night was something else. It wasn't the ruinous beauty tourists marveled at during the day. At night it was a breathing thing, alive in the dark, with corners that swallowed the light and whispered back secrets no one should hear. Michael was starting to hate the job, but he wasn't about to admit that to anyone. He wasn't scared. No way. But the footsteps he kept hearing when no one else was supposed to be there, yeah, those were harder to brush off. Around 2 a.m. the wind picked up, swirling through the arches. It almost sounded like voices, chanting, low and guttural. Michael shook his head. "Don't be an idiot," he muttered to himself. He turned up the volume on his walkie-talkie, letting the static drown out the weird sounds. Now the underground levels, that's where the real shit happened. Most of it was off limits to the public, but Michael had the keys. He hated going down there. As he moved through the narrow passages, he noticed something off. One of the old metal gates leading to a restricted section was slightly ajar. No way. He was sure it had been locked. Heart pounding in his chest, Michael approached cautiously. His flashlight scanned the floor, revealing something smeared across the stone. Blood? No, it was darker, thicker. "What the fuck is this?" he whispered, crouching to get a better look. Just as he leaned in, the air around him grew colder, unnaturally cold. His breath hung in front of him like fog, and then he heard it, a deep, guttural growl, low and threatening, echoing from the dark tunnel beyond the gate. Michael's instinct screamed at him to run, but he stood frozen, the flashlight trembling in his hand. Slowly, from the shadows of the tunnel, something began to emerge. At first it was just a shape, a silhouette too tall, too thin to be human. Its eyes gleamed red, glowing faintly in the darkness, and as it stepped into the weak beam of light, Michael saw its face, pale, hollow, and twisted with a smile that stretched far too wide. The figure of a tall, thin entity, its glowing red eyes piercing through the darkness of the tunnel, a grotesque smile cutting across its pale face, emerging from the shadows. Michael's mind raced. He had seen some shit in his time working here. Drunk tourists, rats the size of small dogs, but this was something else entirely. The figure stood still for a moment, as if studying him, deciding what to do next. Who the hell are you?" Michael managed to stammer, taking a step back. He was somewhere else. The air was thick with the smell of blood and smoke, and all around him he could hear the screams. He looked down and saw that he was no longer in his uniform, but in ragged robes, covered in dirt and blood. He was in some kind of ancient arena, and all around him people were shouting, cheering, baying for blood. And there in the center of the arena stood the figure, only now it wasn't a figure. It was a man, a gladiator, standing tall, holding a blood-stained sword. His eyes, still glowing red, locked onto Michael, and that horrible smile stretched across his face again. An ancient gladiatorial arena filled with a screaming crowd, the ominous figure standing in the center with a bloodied sword, eyes glowing red, and a twisted smile. Michael tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. He was stuck, forced to watch as the gladiator approached, each step deliberate, echoing through the deafening roars of the crowd. And then, just as the sword was raised, the scene shifted again. He was back in the Coliseum, lying on the cold stone floor, gasping for breath. The figure was gone, but the air still felt heavy, charged with something unnatural. Michael scrambled to his feet, heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through his veins. "What just happened?" he muttered, staring down at his shaking hands. But he knew. Deep down, he knew. The Coliseum wasn't just an ancient ruin, it was a place of death, of blood, of unspeakable horrors. And whatever that thing was, it had come from the past, from the very bones of the Coliseum itself. Michael stumbled up the stairs, his mind reeling. He couldn't stay here. Not another minute. As he reached the top, the first rays of dawn began to peek over the horizon, casting a dim light over the city. But even as the sun rose, Michael knew the darkness wasn't gone. It was still down there, waiting. The Coliseum at dawn, its ancient stones bathed in the first light of morning, but with an eerie shadow lingering at the entrance to the underground, as if something still lurks below. Michael never went back. He quit the next day, packed his things, and left Rome altogether. But even miles away in a different country, the dreams came. Every night, the same arena, the same screams, the same glowing red eyes. The Coliseum hadn't let him go, and it never would.